How attachment shows up in adult relationships. In this episode, we'll explore how attachment shows up in adult relationships and how these patterns become more visible in everyday interactions. In the previous episode, we looked at attachment as a system that shapes how people manage closeness and distance. Here, we'll focus on how that system becomes active in adult relationships, often in subtle or familiar ways. Attachment is most noticeable when something in a relationship feels uncertain. That this might be change in routine, a disagreement, a period of distance, or a shift in emotional availability. When uncertainty appears, attachment patterns tend to move into the foreground. One common place attachment shows up is in communication. Some people feel a strong urge to talk things through quickly when something feels off. They may ask questions, seek assurance, or want clarity as soon as possible. Quick, quick, quick. Others may feel the opposite pole, preferring space, time to think, or distance before engaging. When tension arises, do you tend to move towards conversation, or do you feel the need to step back? These responses are not about communication skills alone, they reflect how closeness is regulated. For some people, closeness restores a sense of safety. For others, too much closeness under pressure can feel overwhelming, making distance feel safer. Attachment also shows up in expectations about availability. In adult relationships, people carry assumptions about how accessible others should be, how quickly someone should reply, how often should they check in, how much emotional presence is expected. When these expectations are not met, attachment systems often activate. Do you notice yourself reading meaning into delays or changes in contact? Another everyday example is how people respond to reassurance. Some people find reassurance calming, allowing them to settle and refocus. Others may feel reassured briefly, only to need further confirmation later. For some, reassurance can even increase discomfort, making closeness feel intrusive. How does reassurance tend to land for you when you receive it? I know how it lands for me. Attachment patterns also influence how people handle independence. Some feel comfortable maintaining closeness while also pursuing individual interests. Others experience independence as distance or closeness as constraint. These differences often emerge around time, boundaries, and expectations rather than explicit conversations. Conflict is another area where attachment becomes visible. When disagreements occur, some people prioritize resolution and reconnection. Others prioritize emotional regulation before engaging. Neither approach is wrong, there are different ways of protecting connection under strain. When conflict arises for you, what feels more important to you? Resolving it quickly or creating space first? For me, I think it's relationship dependent. But how's it for you? Attachment also shapes how people interpret emotional expression. Some are comfortable sharing feelings as they arise. Others prefer to process internally before sharing. These preferences can create misunderstandings if they're interpreted as lack of care or excessive intensity rather than differences in attachment regulation. It is important to recognize that attachment patterns are not fixed roles people play, they are responsive and situational. A person may feel settled and flexible in one relationship and more alert and guarded in another. Attachment is shaped by the interaction, not just by individual history. Another place attachment appears is in moments of transition. Changes such as moving homes, shifting roles in a workplace, or altering routines can activate attachment systems because they disrupt predictability. Even positive changes can bring uncertainty. How do you notice yourself responding when familiar patterns shift? Understanding attachment in adult relationships is less about identifying types and more about noticing processes. It is about recognizing when closeness feels regulating and when distance feels regulating, and how these preferences influence behavior. This awareness can change how interactions are understood. Instead of interpreting behavior as personal or intentional, It becomes possible to see it as a response to perceived safety or uncertainty. That shift alone can reduce misinterpretation and escalation. The aim here is not to manage attachment perfectly, but to recognize when it is active. When patterns are noticed, they become less automatic. Without awareness, they tend to repeat themselves. In the next episode, we'll complete this 3-part series by exploring how attachment patterns can shift under stress and why people may respond differently in challenging situations. That's the scope of this episode. Each episode focuses on one specific theme, and this was it. We'll leave it here for now and move on in the next episode.